Wolf Pack, what is going on? We are live with the Roto Street Journal Thursday Night Football Fantasy Tailgate because, yes, we have absolutely made it. It is time, folks, about an hour away now from kickoff for the 2020 football season, and I could not be more excited, as I'm sure all of you are feeling now. It didn't seem like we were going to get football, and here it is. Live in the flesh. I am the Wolf of Roto Street at Roto Street Wolf for the rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves, and I am just beyond thrilled, as you hopefully can tell, to be bringing you this Thursday night football tailgate. Stoked to be going live. Going to answer all your sit-start questions that you have going early week. Also cover tons of injury note to get you ready, get you start thinking about it. We'll, of course, hit the final sit-starts, actives, and inactives on our Thursday or Sunday night fantasy tailgate, but doesn't hurt to get a little taste, get it cracking for the football season. Let's go, Wolfpack. Hold up the drinks. Comment in now what questions you have, how we can help you out. Any likes, shares, comments, retweets, wherever you're watching is always appreciated. But let's start digging in now. And we'll start with just making sure, and when we finally get word, comment in if you hear anything. Brandin Cooks got a quad injury that's been apparently bugging him all of training camp. He is now a true game time decision, going to be limited if he plays. At this point, even if he plays, I feel like you have to have him on your bench. I know I've been touting Cooks all offseason. I still think he could be a great, valuable asset. I'm getting a lot of questions. Do I drop Cooks? I wouldn't. I'd hang tight, but I don't know that you can trust him in week one. Now, it only takes one play for the guy to go deep and go ham, but ultimately, it's so tough to put him in your lineup right now. What does his absence potentially mean for, Will Fuller? Could go absolutely berserk. Getting a ton of sit-start questions this week, and let me know if you have a Will Fuller question about, Will Fuller, Jonathan Taylor, Will Fuller, Deshaun Jackson. It's so tricky, but man, how could you bench this guy? You draft him for this reason to finally use him. He's getting a suspect secondary in a game that should be a shootout, that they should be airing it out early and often. So I am all about getting Will Fuller in there. Also, we'll open up some looks if Cooks does eventually sit. And again, comment in if you've seen any final word, because now I'm doing the show. Stills, Randall Cobb, if you're desperate at wide receiver, could be intriguing plays. Both available in 90% of leagues or more. So check the waiver wire if you're desperate and Cook sits, especially again in those DraftKings Showdowns league. Both of those guys, Cooks and Stills, under 5K. I think 4,600 for Cobb and 4,200 for Stills. Might have reversed those, but I love getting them both in my lineups, even if Cooks plays, but especially if he doesn't. So check your waiver wire for those guys if you're desperate, and check them out in DraftKings. Also, some intriguing news. Let's get to your questions, guys. I got Giuseppe, great to see you. Marco, Sutton, AC joint. So yeah, we're going to cover that. Well, that's a great transition here. Glad to see you, Marco. I know you said you can't always catch us live here, but Courtland Sutton, AC joint in practice, could miss week one and beyond, but we don't know quite yet what that impact will be. Schefter tweeting, the quote was like, we'll see what the impact is. So ultimately, I can't sit here and confidently tell you what's going to happen. I'm not a doctor. AC joints is, I think, a bit about pain maintenance and how well you can handle it and play through it. So he might not even miss the first week. We'll find out hopefully sooner than later. If he misses time, let's play the hypothetical game so you guys can kind of plan around it, right? If he misses time, well, obviously Jerry Jeudy becomes that number one, and his value, in my opinion, skyrockets. I'm seeing a lot of tweets like, oh, no, he needs a 1A to be, like a Calvin Ridley style, needs that 1A guy to draw the attention. I don't think so. I think, Jerry Jeudy can do it all. I think he has one of the best route running prospects to enter the league in so long, so pro ready, that I don't think he'd miss a beat whether or not Sutton's in the lineup. In fact, he only benefits from now becoming the number one target. So I am not on the train that Jeudy needs a true alpha next to him to succeed. Definitely ends up getting higher in my rankings if Sutton misses time for however long he misses time. But also Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon catching some passes over the middle of the field. And take a flyer on KJ Hamler if you're truly desperate. Now, he's also injured and no lock to even play, but worth a stash in case this becomes something that lingers for multiple weeks. Such a great speedster, KJ Hamler, gets some incredible separation, was dominating early camp. So this might clear up a path for him to get some usage. Just some guys to consider. Noah Fant also out there in like over half the league, so check him if you're desperate at tight end. A freak athlete, and the Titans gave up the 4th most points to the position last year, so Noah Fant definitely could be a big riser in light of this. Other big injuries too, and of course we're going to get all those questions. I saw them coming in, guys. Kenny Golladay, hamstring. 2 big receivers, Mike Evans, Kenny Golladay. Let's start with Golladay. Just recently did not practice because of that hamstring. Now questionable for Sunday. And there's also the risk that comes with these. Even if they suit up, the risk for re-aggravation injury is always pretty high. So that's got to have you nervous, especially in a tough matchup with a Chicago D that gave up, the 5th fewest points to wide receivers last year. Golladay was your 3rd-round pick. I get the emotional attachment, but hopefully you have some depth that you can sit and wait a week. Maybe even have Marvin Jones just stack that Lions passing game, and you can get one in there. His value certainly takes a nice boost up. He's going to get a nice bump up in my new rankings that I'll be updating after this or after the football game. Let's be real here. He gets a bump up. Hawkinson, maybe Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, the backfield gets a few more looks here. I'd have a really hard time getting Golladay into my lineups unless we get he's 100%, he's clear, he's good to go. If it's coming down to the wire, and even if he plays, there's a good chance he's going to be on most of my benches where I own him. I think I'll probably take a similar approach to Mike Evans, do another hamstring, another soft tissue thing, quick to re-aggravate. Obviously could flare up, and that's a huge concern for the guy. I love the matchup. I think it's going to be a bombs away shootout style game. Brady versus Breeze. First time we've gotten 2 40-plus-year-old quarterbacks going back and forth, and 2 legends still at the top of their games, in my opinion. So I think that game is incredible to stack on DFS and everything. But Evans is now a whole lot riskier. I own him in almost every league, so I'm pretty freaking devastated by this news. I'm hoping it's nothing. He hasn't practiced since injuring himself about Tuesday now, and it's going to come down to the wire, they're saying. A game-time decision, most likely. Again, like Golladay, that risk of re-aggravating, the risk of being at less than 100%, these things usually take a couple weeks to heal. So you almost rather, as owners, just see them rest the guys, let everybody get healthy, and then you can ultimately use them. If those guys sit, now who could be usable in their absence if they miss time and you're desperate and you're streaming? Well, if it's Mike Evans, Scotty Miller will be a nice plug and play. Him and Brady have apparently had a great rapport. He's available in 96% of Yahoo leagues, so that could ultimately be a target. But if you're not needing to go that deep, Laviska Shenault's only owned in 11% of leagues right now. And I'm telling you, this guy is going to be a monster. I tweeted it out as soon as Leonard Fournette was released that this guy, I wrote an article, Laviska Shenault is by far the biggest gainer of Fournette not being there. In fact, let's kind of just transition now to that backfield. Keep the questions coming in. After this Jags backfield update, I'm going to get all your questions, and then we'll get back to some more updates, but I don't want to keep you guys hanging. That's why I do this, to answer those. But let's take a look at these Jags running backs. James Robinson, now the unquestioned lead back here. And, what do we make of this guy, right? We hated Fournette for so many reasons. Bad game scripts, bad overall offense, not a ton of touchdown equity in an offense that should be towards the bottom half of the league. And now you got Chris Thompson also siphoning receiving work. So there's a lot to not like about owning a back in this backfield. But now we've got Ozigbo on IR, Raquel with COVID. There's really nobody else there. And they're going to try to keep pace, at least early on, until the Jonathan Taylor show just steamrolls them out of commission. But they're going to at least try to keep the pace with the Colts here. And Robinson could be that steadying heartbeat offense. He could end up being just that monster early waiver pickup that just gets like 20 carries a week. And volume is the lifeblood of all of fantasy, but especially running backs. I mean, this guy ranked 4th in spark athleticism, even despite running just a 4.64, a nice 220 sturdy guy. He was, in the 92nd percentile in burst score according to Player Profile. So there's a lot of intriguing athleticism. I mean, he led the league, the NCAA, in yards after contact last year, 1,332 of them, and really just put that entire program on his back. Has more rushing yards and attempts than Chris Thompson in all of his 7 years of NFL. There, Ogunbowale, whatever the frick, the Dare guy they just picked up off the Bucks release. Raquel Armstead, he had more than all of him. Devin Ozigbo over his 2 college seasons. So this guy could just churn out workhorse style numbers, and he's 30% owned right now. So could be out there in your leagues. Just someone worth checking in on. I'm again not like sprinting or blowing all my waiver wire load to get a Jaguars running back, but there is some upside here to this guy. Meanwhile, the guy I like even more, Laviska Shenault, is the one I would be sprinting out, and he's more widely available, only 11% owned. Got plenty of backfield carries in the collegiate game, scored 7 rushing touchdowns out of the Wildcat. An absolute bull. And Trevor Sikkema, joining our podcast, said this guy could be, this was Fournette still there, the most dangerous red zone weapon they have, whether it's in the pass game or the rushing game. And we get reports, recently from Mia, I forget the name, but tweets out that I'm not allowed to tell you what's happening, but let's just say the Jaguars are getting creative with Laviska Shenault. So, and this isn't really a shocker. Doug Marrone came out and said, we're going to move him around, play him at the F tight end, play him in the backfield. And it sounds like that is coming to fruition. We also saw D. Westbrook listed on the third team, wide receiver depth chart. So ultimately, I think the path is very clear for Laviska Shenault, whether out of the backfield, whether out of the wide receiver position, to hold on to some very significant high upside value. And the fact that he's available in, almost 90% of leagues blows my mind. I guarantee you this is going to be the most owned pick, that fast waiver wire, everybody sprinting for him after week 1. Beat the rush. Go get him now. Potentially even use him if you're desperate at wide receiver. That's the bigger fallout for me. And Chris Thompson's also out there in 60% of leagues or so. I mean, Jay Gruden peppered him when he had him over in the Redskins. He was like I think 5th in receptions till he got hurt in his last season with Jay Gruden. He was the RB10 in points per game just a couple seasons ago in 2016, and then started 2017 with 2 back-to-back 25-point days. Gruden just loves the guy. He peppers him relentlessly. So ultimately, I also would give a look first to Laviska, then to Chris Thompson. And then I do like this James Robinson character that's in line for 15-plus carries. I mean, again, if you're desperate for volume, there you go. You got a guy that's going to get it. Let's get to some of your questions here and then keep going with some news and some updates there. I have a nice 7-Up ready for this wolf. Get a beer, my man. Come on. Drop either Danny Dimes or Baker for Tyrod, Tannehill, Rivers, or Teddy. Teddy is my absolute boy. Not a fan of Baker at all this year, so he's the one I'd cut. I like Danny Dimes. Hard early season schedule, though. So I dropped Danny Dimes. I do love Tannehill. I have him actually higher in my rankings. But since you're kind of pairing him up for the upside, we know Tannehill's ceiling. And actually, it's huge. We saw it last year, the quarterback 3 when he took over as a starter. So he'd probably be the first guy I go. But he also has some tricky early season matchups. So I'm looking for Teddy Bridgewater. That's my guy this year, Giuseppe. If you've seen anything from me, I love Teddy Bridgewater, all those yak monsters in the ultimate yak scheme. That's where I'm looking. And Brandin Cooks is officially active. Thank you, Ducks. So a little less streaming appeal to Kenny Stills, to Randall Cobb, but he's said to be limited even if he plays. So you could probably still get those guys, Kenny Stills and Cobb, as value plays in your DraftKings at least. I wouldn't be looking to force him into any lineups, though. Maybe it lessens Fuller's appeal just a little bit. I still think Fuller's going to roast this defense, though. PPR flex, Drake or David Johnson. Man, matchup would be David Johnson, but Giuseppe, if you don't know my feelings about David Johnson by this point, holy fucking shit, I hate that motherfucker. He ruined my season in about 5 leagues last year. I'll never recommend him. You could have asked me if it was David Johnson or like the 5th string on the Jags behind James Robinson, and I would have probably said that guy. And I love Kenny Drake. He had 3 touchdowns against San Fran. I get the matchup's a little intimidating, yeah, but ultimately, I'm not terrified. I'm not scared. He had 3 touchdowns against him last year. You spent a first round or early second on Drake for a reason. Get that guy in your lineup. Duck agreeing, guaranteed volume for Drake, and he feasted on him, just as you said. We got Cooks, Akers, or Mack as flex, full PPR. And can't go Cooks with the limited tag. What if he just flares up and he sits it? What if he doesn't play his full complement of snaps? I don't love Akers for week 1 just because of this commentary about, a 3-headed nightmare, and he's 3rd on the depth chart, and I don't buy any of that. Akers is the guy in this backfield, but if McVay's going to play games early on and kind of make him earn it, like, fuck that shit. And you got Mack, I don't like Mack season long. He's not a guy I'm going after because it's going to be a hot hand backfield. But he gets to the Jaguars. He's going to start against the Jaguars for week 1. He's probably going to put up 80 and a touchdown early on. I think Jonathan Taylor is also going to decimate that Jaguars team, and I think he's going to take that hot hand much sooner than later. But for now, Mack is a very, very viable play in week 1. Based on matchup, they gave up the 2nd most points to running backs in the league last year and have not gotten any better. In fact, they gave up Elias Campbell for free. That defense is pathetic. I think Max steamrolls them. And so while I wait for, I think Max is kind of the perfect bridge guy to get you to Akers. The bridge to Akers, perfect. Let's see what Akers does Sunday night. Let's see if he can separate from the pack. To me, Mack is the best option there. I never thought, preseason I'd be saying that. Talk to me, GOAT. Love you, Corey Wilkes. Should I start Fuller over Golladay tonight? Whew. That is tricky. In all honesty, though, if it was coming down to Sunday and I had the time and I could see what was going on, who's your next option? I would say yes. If you have another option in case Golladay does sit or is less than 100 or risk of re-aggravation, then I'd like to know who that next option would be. But for right now, I'm leaning yes. I'm leaning almost definitely yes, Corey Wilkes. Good to see you, by the way. Thanks for tuning in. But tell me what else your other options are, and we'll get to it. Sutton's absence equals Fant's benefit. So Duck thinking it's Fant that gains. I still think it's Judy that gains the most. It seems obvious, but people seem to try to be cute here and say Judy needs an alpha, and I just don't think that's true at all. But let's see if he's even absent because we don't know yet. OBJ or Will Fuller, asks Brad, half PPR. Cook's active. I think I'm still leaning Will Fuller. I mean, why would you draft the guy? These are the type of nights you drafted him for. These blow-up spots and potential shootouts. Now the probable alpha, especially with Cooks missing so much time in camp, I think I got to go that way. Let's get one more here, then we'll get back to some news, and of course, we'll keep hitting that. Again, any likes, comments, shares, if you're in any fantasy football Facebook groups or anything that you mind dropping us into, it means the world to help us get discovered. So thanks so much, and hopefully we're helping you out here. Kirk and Devontae Parker, PPR Parker getting shadowed by Gilmore. Yeah, I don't like that Gilmore shadow matchup at all. Kirk's not necessarily in an easy spot himself, facing a 49ers defense that is pretty stiff against the pass, pretty stiff against everything. Last year, I do like their chances of moving the ball better, but I will ask you, is there a Deshaun Jackson out there somehow on your waiver wire? He's out there in half the leagues. Jalen Reagor, if not. In fact, that's going to kind of transition us to a note I had to cover here. Jalen Reagor is only 30% owned, and he practiced in full today. I don't care that he practiced in full anyways, because even if he was going to be out for 2 weeks, he should be 70% owned, 80% owned. This guy is unbelievable as a talent, and he was tearing up camp compared to Julio Jones, beating Darius Slay on the regular, fades, screens over the middle of the field, bodies draped over him. He was making every single play that you could possibly make, and essentially the alpha over Deshaun Jackson. Gets an unfortunate injury, but by all accounts is fully recovered and potentially going to play already. You can pick him up and wait and see how he looks, sure, although the Washington matchup is plenty juicy. And I just got to go pick this guy up. He's confirmed that he's superhuman, the fact that he recovered this fast, and he already was playing at a superhuman level before going down, and nobody, had worse QB play. You look at the stats between him, his breakout potential is just insane. The athleticism off the chart, so quick, great athlete. He does it all. He is a true alpha. It reminds me of, call me crazy, OBJ when he was a rookie, getting all that hype, all that praise. Injury then stalled it out a bit. He was available on a ton of waiver wires and then became a league winner. But you don't even have to wait for this guy to come back, it seems like. So I'm all about Jalen Reagor and talking about just other kind of waiver wire guys that could be out there for you. I mean, Laviska Shenault, we already covered, 11% owned. Bryan Edwards, only 23% owned. That's got to change. He's the starting ex-alpha. He had already earned it over Tyrell Williams just on his play. Now Tyrell Williams to the IR, potentially done for the season. And this guy, Devontae Adams comparisons from Derek Carr, who he played with in college. You just love everything that's lining up for this guy. A team that's probably going to have to be chucking early and often in that division with that crap defense. You got to look at Bryan Edwards. I'd go Reagor first. I'd go Bryan Edwards, maybe Laviska, probably Laviska, but I love them both. And then I'm also seeing Robbie Anderson, 29%, and Curtis Samuel, 33%. If I'm this high on Teddy Bridgewater, it's because I'm so high on his weapons just being unlocked to their fullest potential because of Joe Brady, who unlocked Joe Burrow in that entire LSU offense. So I love those guys. Then if you're in deeper leagues, I mentioned Randall Cobb. Let's see what he does tonight. Pick him up. If he's highly used, you have him before that week 1 waiver wire rush. James Washington, only 11% owned. And we have an injury right now to Deontay Johnson misses practice on Thursday, now questionable for Monday Night Football. And that's key because you need your backup plans ready, and you're not going to have too many available to you if you wait it out for Sunday. I don't think Deontay Johnson, is worth waiting it out, at least this early on. Let's see this guy dominate in year 2. Lots of Scott Barrett, for example, great experts recommending this guy upon mountaintops. Guys I very much respect. So I have to respect Deontay Johnson just because of these giants that are respecting him. But ultimately, I don't think he's worth waiting it out and then not having a solid backup plan. James Washington or Chase Claypool, both under that 12% owned mark, could be your backup plan to get a bridge to use Deontay Johnson if he plays or not, because that Giant secondary is so roastable. I think the 4th most points to wide receivers last year. I want some Steelers receivers in my lineup, and if Diontae misses time, it could be James Washington, it could be Claypool. I wouldn't hate streaming either one of them for that Monday Night Football, but you have to, at least if you're dependent upon Deontay Johnson, have yourself a Monday Night Football backup plan. We already talked about the Eagles, but just really quick, Miles Sanders practiced in full on Wednesday, came back with no issues. That hamstring seems fine and ready to go, but they are talking about curling his workload back just a little bit. So something to keep in mind. You're probably starting Miles Sanders, right? You took him in round 1 or early round 2 for a reason. He's facing the Redskins. He had 35 points against them last year. Like, even in a limited role, he's probably going to score. He's probably going to get to 20 fantasy points. But just for like DraftKings 6,300, like, looked so smash and chalky. Might not be the smash play it once was. Maybe Boston Scott has a little bit of a bigger role. We saw him last year when Sanders was hurt. He had, more fantasy points in 2 out of his 3 games to end the season than Sanders did. So Boston Scott could be a sneaky little stash if you're desperate for a running back play. Look for him. Check him out as well. But lock Sanders into your lineup and redraft in regular leagues. DFS-wise, might not be the best play possible. Last couple notes. Let's get a couple questions real quick. We left off at Kirk or Devontae Parker. So we'll go to, should I drop Michael Pittman for Bryan Edwards PPR? Yes, I think so. I look at Pittman. I love the player. Love him. But I like Paris Campbell a lot. I like Jack Doyle as a huge value. I think Hines could catch 60 balls in that offense this year. And I also think it's a run-first attack. They're going to, if they can, pound the ball 45 times when the game script allows it. So that's going to make it very tricky to find guys that you can depend upon in the Colts offense outside of T.Y. Hilton, the main vein of that passing game. And while I think Pittman will have his fair share of touchdowns, have his fair share of decent days, a big body brings, a different element to that receiver room. He's behind Campbell, didn't have the flashiest of camps, and just a low volume passing game with 4 to 5 targets potentially in front of him. Give me Bryan Edwards, who could be that number 1. I think it's going to be Ruggs, but it could be Edwards. I don't see a world where Pittman comes even higher than 3rd or 4th in targets unless there's some injuries or he really just takes off. Scotty Miller time could really be with that Evans injury. Certainly worth a pickup if you need a backup plan to Evans. They play at 4 o'clock, so you're going to be without your 1 o'clock options if it comes down to the game time wire. Scotty Miller for your Mike Evans guys might be the play. If he misses time, because again, good chemistry with Brady, also some sneaky good deep speed. If you look at his player comparison on Player Profile, or Tyler Lockett, because he gets some good deep separation, so not bad. Or drop Pittman for Shenault. That's a personal preference. I have Edwards and Shenault so neck and neck, it's hard for me to make that call for you. I lean personally. Oh, man, that's tricky. I think I like Shenault just because it's like, what does he bring to the table? Let's see how he's used in week 1. Just he's got the higher ceiling of like every single down he's moving somewhere, doing something different. But I still love Edwards. Like that's a really hard one. Pick 1, James Robinson, Preston Williams, or Hurst, half PPR. I like James Robinson a lot, as we talked about, but give me Hurst there. Seattle gave up the 4th most points to tight ends last year, and that game's going to be a shootout, a dome-style game. That's one of my favorite games to target in DFS and just in redraft too. I think it's going to be back and forth, points bonanza, similar to tonight, what I think we're going to get, similar to the Tom Brady shootout with Drew Brees. And then we got a few games. I think Cowboys and Rams could definitely be one of those shootout-style games to target. And that's definitely one I like a lot, Seattle versus Atlanta. And Hurst is just in such a great spot that we've raved about him all offseason because that Austin Hooper role. I mean, Dirk Cutter loves his tight ends. I don't think that's just like narrative street trying to, rewrite, find a coaching thing to cling on to. We saw it with O.J. Howard, 16.9 yards per reception back-to-back years. Also, Cameron Brate, like those two combined for 12 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons. And then Brate had 10 himself the year before. Mercedes Lewis had 10 way back the day in Jacksonville. Tony Gonzalez had some career seasons under Cutter. The guy loves tight ends. He's the first to admit it. And I think they didn't give up a second-round pick, hugely valuable draft capital for no reason to get hurt. And then you got Matt Ryan calling him the most athletic tight end he's worked with in his career. So give me Hurst. We drafted him for a reason. He's my favorite, especially in a league that rewards some reception points. James Robinson for Anthony Fella here, or Nyheim Hines, full PPR. Ooh, full PPR makes it tricky, but I think Hines is going to be very, very game script this year. If they're behind, he's going to be the guy, and he's going to see a lot of targets. If they're ahead, he might not touch the field. And what do you think is going to happen against the Jaguars? They're going to steamroll that team. So give me James Robinson. He's the every down back, potentially. Thompson will see his receiving work. He'll be a bit game script dependent too, but I know he's going to touch the ball 15 times. Hines might not touch the field. I like Hines. I like owning Hines, but you got to use him in games when you think the Colts are going to be down, because otherwise, some games he might catch 10 balls, some games he might touch the field. And I don't think this is a game you're going to get a lot out of Hines, Anthony. Brad, pick 2, half PPR, OBJ, Fuller, T.Y., Hilton. It comes down, Hilton I'm locking in against a crap Jags defense, even though I think they're just going to bleed that clock and pound them into submission. Hilton that's going to help them set up that play action, and just one big play for Hilton. I like that setup. I don't like OBJ. I mean, OBJ, what a talent. Finally fully healthy, they're saying. But the man's taking heat turds off his fucking chest, and now he's also facing Baltimore. Like, I don't know. Something about that dude is just sketching me the fuck out. And I don't like the matchup. I don't want to target that game. And Fuller tonight, you get that Thursday night football, energetic jits to you. Now, what if he pulls his hammy and just comes up limp first play? Then you'll hate me, and I apologize. But you have Fuller. You got to ride him out while you have him, especially in shootout style matchups. So I'm all about that. Let's take a handful more here. And then of course we're going to get them all, but I want to cover just a couple more notes. And this one's going to definitely give us a reason to cover one more note. Cody's got Fuller, Taylor, and Ridley got to start 2 PPR. Ridley's definitely my first play. As I said, I love the shootout style option of that game in a dome. Going to be a monster. And then it comes down to Taylor or Fuller. And there's some recent comments. Let's pull this up. Let's cover this, Cody, about Jonathan Taylor. He's going to be a spellback for Marlon Mack. He's trying to keep Marlon Mack fresh for the fourth quarter. Zach Kiefer, what the fuck? Who are you? What are you thinking here? Maybe that's what you've been told, but you also in the same exact paragraph wrote, Taylor's gonna, Frank Reich's gonna ride a hot hand. He's already admitted that. Taylor's a different type of beast. This is probably the best running back prospect we've seen since Saquon Barkley. Just a freak. Over 2,000 total yards in 3 straight seasons. Just a monster. Just an absolute monster. 220 runs, a 4.39, like ridiculous spark. Everything. Athlete, production, can get it done as a receiver. Everything you want to see now behind an elite offensive line. What do you think is going to happen? To me, I've seen a lot of this comparison on Twitter. Chester Taylor and Adrian Peterson, where Chester Taylor was the starter and AP was going to spell him and get him. And AP ran for like 150, 2 touchdowns and never looked back. That's what's going to happen here. I love that comparison. I think it's very legit, and I love Jonathan Taylor. So to get back to your question, is it Fuller? Is it Taylor? I personally, it's tricky. It's so hard. It's so freaking Fuller versus Taylor, because they both have huge ceilings. I think I go, the PPR setting makes me lean Fuller because he's going to get peppered tonight. They're going to be playing from behind. I think the Chiefs are going to go up big early on. And then, it's going to be who else do they have to throw to, especially if Cooks is so limited as they're saying. I go Fuller, but man, is it close. Because if he steamrolls the Jags like I think he's going to, you're never going to look back, and you're going to always have Taylor in your lineup. Just keep patient there with him. What's up, Alex? Could you help me out? Of course. Thanks for tuning in, man. Should I start Akers or Marvin Jones, half-point PPR? I'm in Marvin Jones there. The injury to Golladay being one factor. He could be Jones, the number one target in that offense. And two, the Akers buzz right now is just a little hideous. The third-string guy. They're going to start out with 2. Now, if we get rumors that, Darrell Henderson's going to sit and it's a 2-back show, I don't think Akers going to have any trouble separating from these guys. But I'd like to wait it out and see it first. And Marvin Jones, as a potential number 1, he dusted Chicago last year. I like that play. That's where I am leaning. Lockett or Fuller and yardage heavy. I'm going Lockett there. ASAC. I got to go Lockett. He's just I love the guy. Wide receiver 3 before he got hurt last year in terms of fantasy points in a low volume attack. Now, if we get a shootout like I think in Atlanta to start the year and get it cooking, I'm all about it. Duke Johnson outlook. Fuck Duke Johnson. Like, why? They don't pass to the running back anyways. Like, he had the clearest path to huge workload in the receiving game last year and didn't see any. He should. I like Duke Johnson. I think he deserves a whole lot more than he gets. But now you get a more competent receiver, a Carlos Hyde on receiving steroids in terms of David Johnson. So what's he going to get, Duke Johnson? Just a few scraps? Are they going to use 2 backfield sets? You certainly can't use him. Let's put it that way. I personally don't see much reason to hold on to him unless you got absolute garbage on your waiver wire. So not a big fan of him. Drop handcuffs, Ito Smith for either Ayuk or Shenault. PPR, yeah, drop Ito Smith. Brian Hill's the handcuff there anyways, Giuseppe. So I'd say get rid of them. David Johnson or Corey Davis. You're just trying to get me to go on a fucking rant here, aren't you, Anthony? I'm not trying. I'm going to take a sip of beer and kind of pause here for a sec. And we're just going to move on. No rants tonight, not yet. It's too early to have my blood pressure pop at this point. Melvin Gordon from BJack83 or Jonathan Taylor, full PPR. I'm going to go Jonathan there. Now, let's see what happens to Sutton. But I hate everything about these reports on Melvin Gordon. Not in shape, struggling with the altitude. Rib injury, smart a lot of camp. Lindsey opens the door for Lindsey to outperform him. And all reports are Lindsey's been by far the more impressive guy. Fangio saying it's going to be a near even split that you won't even know who our starter is. I don't want to use Gordon. Give me the fresh young stallion that's going to steamroll the Jaguars and take over that backfield sooner than later. As I said, I'm not worried about these Mack reports. Yeah, Mack will start. Yeah, Mack's going to probably do good week 1 because the Jaguars, they're horrible. But Jonathan Taylor is just a different breed of monster. So that's who I am rolling with. Gibson, Kirk, John Brown for the flex, leaning Gibson, even though I've never seen him play it down before. Throw on his highlight tape to India, and then you will be more than excited to get Antonio Gibson. Only 77 touches, and he racked up like 1,100 yards and like 12 times or something crazy because he is a freakish playmaker. Just like Jonathan Taylor's an absolute specimen at 220, 439. That's exactly what Gibson did too. Now, the lack of college touches, yeah, concern. Of course I'm concerned. Why wouldn't this guy, if he's such a freak, touch the ball more? I don't have an answer for you, but the fact that he's on speed dial, he's touched the ball so much in training camp, the fact that they release AP, who then goes out and says they want Gibson to be that guy pony style, that they want to ride and pepper, all those signs lead to me believing Gibson is the main guy in this backfield. He's the main plan that they have. And they're going to be playing catch-up mode all day against the Eagles. So that's just going to open up tons and tons of dink opportunities for this guy. Only 4,000 on DraftKings too. I mean, you're stone cold lock value play on DraftKings. Last couple notes here, and then it's purely your questions. So keep them coming, guys. But last 2 year, AJ Green, first full practice since 2018. Real comforting. Thanks, AJ. Glad to see you there. Why are we still going in on this guy? What's the point? He couldn't even make it through training camp without having his little hammies flare up. He didn't play all last year because his hammies flared. Like, stay the fuck away from him. You're already done in drafts. So if you own him, okay, let's see what happens. Let's just hope you don't own him. I'm not starting him week 1. I don't feel good about him week 1. I want to see him make it through a game and look like AJ Green before I start saying the AJ Green back's here. It's Tyler Boyd. It's the Tyler Boyd show. It has been for the last 2 years. That's not changing. All camp reports are Tyler Boyd's the alpha. Get Boyd in your lineup, especially against the Darwin Jamesless Chargers secondary. They're going to, I think Burrow's a great stream this week, but AJ Green is staying firmly planted to any benches. If I hypothetically owned him, I certainly don't because I have no interest in AJ Green, that bag of dirt from last year. And last note here, it's not about an injury, but it's Cam Newton about to ball out, and mostly as a rusher. The Athletic reporting, and this goes back all the way to when I talked to Hannibal when they first signed him, months ago. The Patriots coaches believe Cam Newton can still be the kind of rusher he was in 2017 when he ran it almost 140 times, 139. That would make this guy who's going in round 12, 13, 14 of some leagues ridiculous upside. I mean, he was a fantasy MVP when he was rushing it that many times. Talk about Konami code. Think about how much more valuable at 1.5 times a touchdown for rushing, 2 times rushing yardage compared to passing yardage. It's such a huge edge when you get a guy like this. A 1-year prove-it deal, too. Newton's going to want to show off his rushing upside to get that big, fat bag for next year. The Patriots coaches don't care what they do with him. They're just going to ride him into the ground for this 1-year prove-it style deal. They're going to use him as creatively as anybody has ever in his career. I can't wait to see this marriage. I would be thrilled to own Cam Newton, as I do in a few leagues. I'm beyond thrilled. And I'd have him right out there for week 1 against Miami. I'm seeing a lot of Miami's a sneaky defensive streamer because Cam Newton's going to take some. No. Cam Newton's going to bowl over that Miami team. Don't hesitate to get that guy out there. And don't hesitate to get his number 1 guy, Edelman, out there. Getting peppered in practices, frequently targeted was the report from The Athletic in that same report about Newton. Of course he is. That's how this offense has always flowed through the slot receiver. I had a tweet about it. They average 140 targets a season and haven't finished beyond wide receiver 12 in points per game twice out of 11 years. 9 out of 11 times they've been wide receiver 1s, the slot receivers, whether Edelman or Welker in this offense. Yeah, Tom Brady had a lot to do with that, but this is the system. And Newton's, improved that short game accuracy throughout his career. So I'm all about that connection. I'm getting it fired up for my lineups this week. And that's the moral of the story. We're going to get our Thursday night betting preview in on a second, but let's get to a handful more of your questions here. Over under 5 weeks before Will Fuller pops a tire. I'm giving the over. I have some faith this year, D'Andia. And until he does, get him out there, get him in your lineup, and fire things up. Trey Briggs, Miles Sanders, or play it safe with David Johnson. Only allowed to start 1 running back in my lineup. I'm going Sanders. I'm not the guy if you want an unbiased opinion on David Johnson because, again, if you missed it earlier, fuck David Johnson, an absolute douche last year. I think he's in a good spot this week until he just wears down like the loser he is. But still, Sanders against Washington, even on a limited workload, I like that. I like that a whole hell of a lot more. Doyle, Ebron, Jarwin available on waivers. I have Gesicki and Hawkinson. What's your advice? I love Jack Doyle. Trey Burton, especially now, going to the IR for however long that's going to last. Frank Reich's scheme peppers tight ends relentlessly. Phillip Rivers also peppers tight ends religiously. He peppered tight ends in Frank Reich's scheme just a few seasons ago when it was San Diego, now Los Angeles. I love Jack Doyle. I think it's the unsexiest upside out there in the game right now. I think this guy is going to see close to 100 targets against the Jaguars. He might be the one that pounds in 2 touchdowns this week. So I'm a huge fan of him, and I'm also a fan of Ebron. They're saying he's moving all around. He's excited about his role in this offense. Who says he's not the number 2 guy in this offense after Juju? I like all the receivers too, but Ebron could be a monster red zone target for Big Ben. He's only 2 seasons removed from having the touchdown lead in the NFL. I think he tied Tyreek Hill that year or whatever it was. So, Ebron also very intriguing. I'm not a huge fan of Jarwin, but I'm just not a huge believer in Gesicki and Hawkinson. Those are 2 of my fades. I'd rather have Doyle and Ebron than both of them. I see the case for all of them. It's all the upside tight ends that could blow up, and they all have good cases. I buy the narratives for Doyle and Ebron a lot more than I do Gesicki and Hawkinson personally. Laviska, Reagor, or Ayuk. Now, Cool, are you just talking about owning or starting this week? Because Reagor is by far the guy I want to own, and it's not really even close between those 3. Laviska's not really that far, actually. I'll come back and say that too. If I have to start one, Laviska's who I feel better about. Let's see what the Reagor reports are now. If he's going to be full go, not on a limited snap count, not like a testing it out and seeing how he feels, then I'll bump Reagor up even further. But for starting this week, I think Laviska's bringing by far the most usage ceiling and floor, but long-term stash, to me, it's Reagor. Gallaudet may not play, and Deontay Johnson may sit. Do I play Sammy W tonight? Oh, that's so tricky. You're rolling the dice with Sammy. You got 2 good options. You need one of them to play. Let's also talk, who could be backups on the waiver wire. Daniel, I know you'll be tuned in on Sunday because you're a loyal viewer. I think you can't roll those dice on Sammy. You could be looking at a fat goose egg. Now, you could be looking at 150 and 2, but we got that, once last year? Week 1 when Tyreek Hill wasn't playing. I can't put Sammy in my lineup. I just can't. I think it's going to be the Hardman show sooner than later. So not into Sammy. Drop Darrell Henderson for Brian Henderson. You mean Brian Edwards, I imagine there. Giuseppe. I have Kirk and Pittman as my other receivers. I think Pittman and Henderson can both go to the waiver wires for some of those guys we've talked about, Laviska, Reagor especially, and also Brian Edwards. I think all those guys are worth pickups over Henderson or Pittman. Let's keep these beers flowing, guys. It's football. We got fucking football back. Kyle Toons. Marvin Jones, Devontae Parker, Sanders are my bottom 3 wideouts. Would you take Jalen Reagor over any of them? Oh, man, that's tough because I actually love all 3 of those guys. I have Reagor like right below that tier, but no. I mean, if that's where you could drop like Hawkinson or Gesicki, pick up Reagor and one of those other tight ends, then do that. I think you got to just get this guy, even if you don't use him, just so your opponents don't get a potential league swinger. Completely agree. Can't wait till Monday. Look elsewhere on Deontay Johnson. He's saying Gibson or Bell for the season PPR. Ask Aaron. Aaron, good to see you. Vander Venter. I remember that name. Man, I have no interest in Le'Veon Bell. And he's the higher floor. Like he's the guy that you're going to get something out of. But don't, Adam Gase saying it's going to be like a 45-55 split with him and Gore. Gore getting more work throughout camp. The red zone issues already existed last year, and they're going to be even worse. He tried to sign Kalen fucking Ballage to just mess with him. I don't have any faith in Gase. I have no faith in the Jets' line or offense, despite the improvements they've made. Gibson just has all the ceiling in the world. Now, he has by far the lower floor. He might be nothing this year, but he also might be a 3-down back in an offense. Scott Turner, if he follows his father's footsteps, which I expect, their running backs averaged 130 targets a season. 32% share went to the running backs. Gibson's a receiver running back hybrid that they drafted to be that guy on a two running back set, move him all over. But I think he could evolve into like a, I don't want to say Christian McCaffrey. Let's be real here. But that's the role. That's the Norv Turner offense, how much they peppered McCaffrey. We could get like a light Christian McCaffrey, very light, like very, very light Christian McCaffrey, or nobody can touch C-Mac. But Gibson has that type of usage ceiling. Obviously on a worse team, but it's not like the Panthers blew doors open last year when C-Mac was a league winner. Gibson could win you your league. Bell might not lose it for you, but he'll never win it for you. So give me Gibson is a long-winded way of saying that. What you got, Wolf? What's going on, Philly Iceberg? Half PPR, who you trust more in the flex? Cobb, Williams, Hurst, Robinson. I think, did you already ask this one? I think I already got this, but Hurst was the play, in my opinion. And I like Williams, but not against New England. I don't want to have Cobb in there and just, what happens tonight, we don't know. And Robinson, I like the potential 30 carries, 15 carries or so. But give me Hurst. Give me Hurst. I like that, all the reasons we already cited, and I like the fact that it's against the 4th most points to tight ends last year in a shootout style game. I'm big high. Are you high on Gibson PPR? I hope that answer's already out there for you, Giuseppe. Yes, beyond high, ridiculously high. 5 blunts high is how high I am on Gibson. He's the best. I'm so stoked on him. And I could be dead wrong, but could not be any higher on Antonio Gibson. Nice matchup and tight end knowledge. Thanks. Oh, yeah, so I got that one for you. He turns. Yeah, I don't want Odell Beckham taking just fucking steamers off the chest. Let's get that out of my lineup any day. The locker room just does not respect that type of the fantasy locker room can't take that type of behavior, especially against Baltimore. Dumps on the chest. Come on, Odell. What are we doing? Fuller over McLaurin or AJ Brown, half PPR. Oh, man, that's kind of where I draw the line. Like, you've heard me recommend Fuller over a lot of people. Just can't do that. No. McLaurin or AJ Brown, got to go either one of those guys. And the matchup's tough for AJ this week. And if McLaurin draws shadow coverage from Slay, but those two are my top 12, locks probably every week too. So as much as I like Fuller in the upside, if Cooks wasn't playing, I might question a little more, but nah, it's not a fault on Fuller. I just love me some AJ Brown and Terry McLaurin. Wolf, What's going on? Let's win another this year. Mateo, great to see you, man. So glad to see you tuned in. Allen versus Tannehill, who won me in 2019. Also, I need flex PPR, pick 2. Parker, Gurley, Keenan, Allen. I'm going Josh Allen. He gets the Jets this week, right? Like, I love Tannehill. I know you won your title, and I totally respect that you're letting emotions play a factor, because I do too. You got to go to your guys that bring you the ship. But he's facing Denver, one of the better secondaries in the league. They did lose Harris, not the best, but one of the better secondaries, one of the better defenses, whereas Allen gets maybe the worst. A horrible secondary from last year loses their best player in Jamal Adams. Allen's you get Diggs in there too. Like, who's going to cover Diggs and John Brown in that defense? Never mind the rushing upside, because they're just going to move it with that. Whenever, I forget the exact stat, but it was something like whenever Allen faced a bottom half defense, he averaged like the 3rd most points in fantasy versus, tougher matchups. He didn't rise to the occasion, especially when they were down. They're going to steamroll the Jets, and Allen's going to roll. So that's who I go. Now, to the other part of your question, Dev Parker, Gurley, or Keenan Allen, I think I bench Parker with that Gilmore matchup. Let's see what Gurley does. He's still, early in the season, so he's fresh, ready to go. Let's see what they do with him. And then Keenan Allen, nobody allowed more slot yardage than Cincinnati last year. I think that game could have a sneaky shootout. Like, we talked about the big shootouts, Seattle, Atlanta, Brady, and Breeze, Cowboys, Rams. Some sneaky ones. I really like Cincy, and I like the Chargers to shoot out. I also love Teddy Bridge and those Panthers to shoot out with the Vegas Raiders. But give me Gurley, give me Keenan Allen. Do you trust Montgomery as a flex if he plays? Hell no. No way, Daniel Allen. I don't trust Montgomery if he was fully healthy. I don't want anything to do with Montgomery this year. Why do you have Montgomery? Have you been following us? Screw Montgomery. You don't want him in your lineup. Fuck Montgomery. No. Definitely not, even if you play, especially if he plays, because he might re-aggravate something and get hurt. Is he truly in game shape after missing all these weeks? But then anyways, even if he was fully healthy, the dude did nothing on 260 touches last year. Mitch Trubisky's, as last time I checked, still their quarterback, so his offense is going to do nothing. I like Tariq Cohen, especially if Montgomery doesn't play against Detroit. They gave up a ton of receiving work to backs last year. But no interest in Montgomery. I think Scotty Miller is a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, or other if Evans is out. I mean, a good matchup, because you imagine we get, the top coverage to shift to Godwin there. And what the fuck's Lattimore? So that obviously hurts Godwin if he plays. Well, it doesn't hurt Godwin because he can get peppered if Evans doesn't play. But if you get that weak coverage on Scotty and he does truly have that rapport down with Brady, I'd say wide receiver 3. I think he'd probably rank in my top 40, top 35 receivers, maybe even higher. I'd have to look. But yeah, definitely not a wide receiver 2. I look at my top 24. I think Marquise Brown's 20, so it's he's not going to approach that territory. But 4,000 on DraftKings, if you're desperate for an Evans fill-in, I think he is highly usable if somebody misses it. And including PPR, yeah. PPR only helps him out. Jordan, my dude, the wolf is spicy tonight. Dang. Great to see you, man. So happy you tuned in. I miss you, man. One of my favorite long-term fans here. Should I start Brandin Cooks today over Devontae Parker? Oh, no. I don't like Parker against Gilmore, but he crushed him last year. Cooks, how could you? The dude's been limited all training camp. Has he really forged that rapport yet? Is he going to re-aggravate something? There's just so much risk. And now when I tell you to bench him, he's going to probably go 150 and a touchdown. But I can't trust that. I truly can't. So give me Parker. Give me Parker there. But if you have other options, I wouldn't hate exploring that either. Let's check in. I don't know if we've put it in the Thursday night football matchup. I know a lot of you guys have played that game, but we're going to get that up in a second. Let's keep getting through your questions, though. Let's fucking go Thursday night football. Love it, Mike. Great to see you. Glad you tuned in for our Thursday night football kickout every Thursday at 7 p.m. Drop Darrell Harrison for James Robinson, PPR. Excuse me. I would go. I would go. I'd like those receivers better, Edwards, Laviska, than James Robinson. But yeah, I'd rather have, if it's just running back for running back, give me James Robinson there. And it looks like it's up. So I'm going to take a pause, folks, and make sure to retweet and share out our Thursday night football contest. That's like the one of my favorite things that we do here. So whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, give me 1 second to share out our Thursday night football contest. Boom, 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 boom. So essentially how it works, I'm going to pull it up here for you guys to see it. Let me get this question out of the way too. So we're going to give you these. Oh, I got the banner in the way now too. Hold on. So we give you these matchups, and you got to essentially get all 5 right. Now, if you do, you win an RSJ shirt on us. So you can comment those in. You do have to like us and post that you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're doing it, and like the post and help it get out. You can tag 3 friends for a premium gear upgrade. So that's just the matchups there. Do you want Mahomes versus Watson? Do you want the Fresh Prince, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or David Johnson? Got to go Fresh Prince. Let's be real here. Tyreek versus Travis. That could be a tricky one because the Texans are horrible against ends last year, at least. And they're also bad against receivers. Tyreek go for 200 at any point. So that's tricky. Fuller versus Cobb plus Stills. So the total of Cobb plus Stills. Now that Cooks is playing, it gets a little bit trickier. Fuller probably will outscore them in my opinion, but we'll see. And this one's McCole, Watkins, Duke Johnson. Which one's going to be the best out of those plays? So pick all 5 right. You get a free shirt. I'm going to retweet this and make my picks here. So mine are Mahomes, CEH, Tyreek, Fuller, McCole, and I'm going to tag Barrett, attack Barfield, and Harditz and see if we can get these guys going on the contest here. Alrighty, folks. So check that out and do your best to win us a free T-shirt. Few people have cracked the code. It's not unbeaten yet. Last year we had a handful of weeks where the winners took home some gear. So check that out. Check out our contest. Thanks, CJ, for alerting me that is up. Now let's get back to your questions. Gibson versus Montgomery. Did you just hear me rave about Gibson and shit all over Montgomery? Are you Odell and you just like people dumping all over your chest, 07? Like, you got to go Gibson. No way I'm putting Montgomery in my freaking lineup. Start Murray over Wentz this week, regardless of matchup. Ooh. Mitchell always bringing the heat questions. Great to see you, by the way. 49ers, Murray dominated them last year. But Wentz gets Washington. He had his highest point totals against Washington last year. Especially if Reagor plays, I think I lean Wentz for this week 1 matchup. I do, as high as I am on Murray. But I'm not fading Murray. I'm not benching him if I didn't have a good option. But Wentz is just that good of an option. Full PPR flex, James White, Le'Veon Bell, or Fournette. I think with the Miami matchup and those injuries with Damian Harris out, them bringing Sony Michel along slowly, I think I go, especially full PPR, James White there. Bell's not in a horrible spot. I'd love to wait and see on that backfield for the Bucks. So give me James White with Bell as a close second. Bridgewater or Goff from Twig Nation. What's up, Twigs? I go Bridgewater. You know me at this point. I'm all in on the Teddy Bridge show, and it's not like I'm going to bench him for a matchup against the Raiders. Goff in a decent spot against the Cowboys, too, in a game that I think is going to go back and forth. But I'm going Teddy Bridge all day. I think he could throw 3-4 touchdowns week 1 on just yards after the catch for McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Curtis. Like, they're going to destroy the Raiders, and the Raiders they have the firepower to keep it going back and forth all day against that awful defense. Teddy or Tannehill? Ooh, now we're getting tricky. I'm going Teddy, though. Sticking with my boy there. I don't like that matchup against Denver for Tannehill, and he was pretty matchup-proof last year, but this is going to be a good test. Like, is he truly what we saw last year? If he can get it done against Denver and is another monster fantasy day, then okay. Then I'm all in on Tannehill the rest of the year. This is a great measuring game for him. I love having him on my bench for that. But if I have Teddy, I'm going Teddy. PPR, start 4. A-Rob, Ruggs, Edelman, Lamb, Landry, or Djax for Jacob Abady. Great to see you, Bates. A-Rob's the lock, and I'm not even thinking twice about. Edelman against Miami, lock, don't think twice about. Djax against Washington, lock it in, don't think twice about. I mean, week one, doesn't he have like a history of like 30 points every single week one for the last like 10 years? I'm going to keep that streak going, especially against Washington in week one. So A-Rob, Edelman, and Djax are locks. Then it comes down to, do you want Landry in a tough matchup against Baltimore? Not really. So now, Ruggs versus Lamb, I like the upside of both of them. Give me Ruggs. I like targeting that game, that Panthers Raiders stack. I think Ruggs could just tear it up from the start. So, to me, it's a no-brainer with A-Rob, Edelman, and Djax. And then, if you wanted to go one of the other three over Ruggs, that's fine too. But I go Ruggs personally. Pick one PPR flex. Woods, Djax, or M. Brown. It's got to be Woods. And I love me. Oh, wow. That's tricky, though. Marquise Brown, Deshaun Jackson, all great options. But I think Ruggs is just going to go absolutely insane. Not Ruggs, Woods this season. And I think it starts with the Cowboys. They lose Byron Jones. That secondary is going to be pretty suspect this year. And I could see that game really, really becoming out of hand early on. Tunes with another. Breeze is my starting QB. Should I play Sanders over Marvin Jones for the stack? Stacking is crucial in DFS, but I don't know that I need to do it every single time in redraft. And I love Sanders against Tampa Bay. But especially if Gallaudet is banged up, and especially if he misses it, and there's Jones ascends to that clear-cut number one, give me Jones is where I'm leaning there. I have A.J. Brown and Tannehill's available. Do I drop Bridgewater for Tanny? I wouldn't, just because I'm so high on Bridgewater. I can't advise anybody to ever cut Teddy Bridge. T-minus 30 minutes, baby. Jake Knight, let's get it. FF undefeated. Cheers away. Cheers. Everybody put them back. People, I don't even know what they're laughing at. Probably the heat turns off the chest for Odell Beckham. But folks, we're now like 30 minutes. I mean, we're just about there. So we got one last question here. Shenault, Edwards, Devontae Parker, PPR. I feel like I got to go old man Parker just because, again, he got it done at such a high level, even against Gilmore last year. Probably the best bet for a touchdown. Those other two guys are such great stashes, and I can't wait to see what they do. But I'd have a hard time benching Parker for either of them. All righty, folks. We will be back on Sunday for your fantasy football tailgate. I cannot wait. We got a couple of questions coming in, so I'll get back to those too, and then we'll give you the wrap up here. It's actually 2 QB. My third QB is Rodgers. Would you start Rodgers over Goff? Yeah, against Minnesota's banged up secondary where they got rid of everybody. I think Rodgers lights him up week one. So yeah, I would. Give me Rodgers Bridge out of those ones. But folks, thanks so much for tuning in to the Thursday night tailgate. The even bigger, badder tailgate will be Sunday when we have final answers to Golladay, Evans, all these other times. Mike Clay asking, what time Sunday? 11 a.m. Eastern time. So 2 hours before kickoff. We'll go right up to kickoff if that's how many questions we have. Our record set last year was, I think, 130 questions. So love to smash that right from week one. So get your questions ready. We'll be there for all your final news. Let's go. Thursday Night Football. It's back, folks. We made it. It never seemed like it arrived, and it is here. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you liked what you saw on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss these live streams in the future. Obviously, Facebook too. Likes, comments, always appreciated. You can find me at Roto Street Wolf on Twitter. All our content, rotostreetjournal.com. We breathe and feed Fantasy Wolves in the podcast. Fantasy Fullback Dive, we pave your path to 2020 titles. I'll be posting our show schedule too. We'll have one almost every single day outside of Fridays, so we can always have this live interaction. You guys are the best. Thanks so much for tuning in. Best of luck. Good luck. Check out that contest for Thursday Night Football too. And let's get it done. Clyde Edwards-Helaire tonight, baby. He is going to go 120 and 2 TDs. Let's watch our man go ham. See you guys later.